Welcome to Planet 412. I'm your host, Matt Emsch. And you've landed here right around the bend to Thanksgiving. It's not far off this week. And you're going to get a special video. The autumn air had grown thick and heavy, a far cry from the crisp fall breezes the Connors family usually loved. For months, an ominous presence lingered over their rural Pennsylvania homestead, a sense that something was watching them. Hiding just beyond the tree line, they'd first noticed it during summer, a slow escalation of strange, unsettling events that became harder to dismiss as mere animal activity. It started small: shredded trash bags, claw marks on trees, and the occasional spine-chilling howl that echoed through the night. But as the weeks passed, the intrusions grew bolder. Something big was coming closer to their house, bold enough to leave half-buried, gnawed animal carcasses on the property, in trees. And at night, once in a while, they would get a bam or slap on the house and wake everybody up. And as always, as the night descended, strange eyes would glimmer in the darkness, their yellow glow unmistakable. Jack Connor, the head of the family, had shrugged it off at first, rationalizing that it was just wolves or coyotes. But deep down, he sensed it was something much worse. His son Ethan even swore he saw a creature, a dogman, he called it. One evening, a hulking figure with dark fur and unnervingly human-like features peering at him from the edge of the yard. Jack laughed it off, though even he couldn't deny the look of pure terror in his son's Ethan's eyes. November rolled around, and with Thanksgiving approaching, Jack was eager to go turkey hunting, trying to reestablish some normalcy, but the previous night had been worse than ever. The whole family heard them. Howls that sounded like twisted human screams, coupled with an unbearable scratching on the walls of their home. They'd all been awake, huddled in the living room, guns loaded and ready. By dawn, the noises had stopped, but the family was rattled to the core. Despite their fears, Jack insisted on going ahead with the hunt, determined to bring back a turkey for Thanksgiving. "This is our home," he muttered as he loaded his rifle, half convincing himself. "We're not letting any animal or whatever it is to scare us off." He took Ethan with him, hoping the familiar father-son tradition would calm them both. They trekked into the woods, the landscape eerily silent, devoid of the usual chirping birds and rustling leaves. They walked cautiously, keeping a wary eye on the trees. Occasionally, Jack would catch glimpses of movement, shadows shifting just out of sight. Then there was a snap of twigs behind them. Jack whipped around, rifle at ready. Through the undergrowth, he saw a pair of glinting yellow eyes watching them. It was a dogman, just as Ethan had described. A monstrous beast standing nearly 8 feet tall with broad, muscular shoulders and an elongated snout, teeth bared in a sinister grin. The creature's eyes held a terrifying intelligence, as if it understood exactly what Jack was planning to do. More eyes started to appear. The entire pack was there. A circle of dogmen closing in on them, their growls resonating through the trees and Jack and Ethan's bodies. Jack backed up, pulling Ethan with him, his heart hammering. So much so, he said he saw his shirt pounding when he looked down. But the dogmen They didn't charge. Instead, they held their ground, baring their teeth and snarling. They were waiting, enjoying the fear they were instilling in their prey. Desperate, Jack fired a shot, the echo ripping through the forest. One of the dogmen flinched, but didn't fall, snarling with even more aggression. They closed in now, almost in sync, as if taunting him, pushing Jack and Ethan back, hurting them like prey. Suddenly, a howl erupted from behind them. Another dogman had circled around, blocking their escape route. Jack's blood ran cold. He pulled his son Ethan closer, standing his ground, but he knew they were trapped. At that moment, his wife Mary burst into the clearing, holding a flare gun she'd found in the basement. Without hesitation, she fired it into the air. The bright red light startled the creatures, and for a brief moment, the dogmen hesitated. Seizing the chance, Jack grabbed Ethan and ran, his family close behind. They sprinted through the forest faster than they ever have in their lives, the dogmen's snarls echoing behind them, but none dared to cross the flare's path. Almost like a dog barking at a sweeper. They won't go past it or near it, but they just bite at it and bark. The family made it back to their house, slamming the door behind them, hearts pounding, hands trembling. For the first time, Jack truly understood the danger lurking in their woods. This wasn't over. The dogmen had claimed their land and let the Connors know they were mere intruders. That night, they heard the scratching again, this time more vicious, as if the creatures were inches away from breaking through the walls. The Connors knew their Thanksgiving had become a battle of survival. Their home was a cage, and the dogmen, those brutal, twisted things, they would never leave. Thanksgiving dawned with a heavy sky, the kind that seemed to trap shadows in the corners of the Connors' home. The turkey Jack had hunted remained untouched on the kitchen counter, an almost cruel reminder of the day's original intentions. But there would be no feast this year, for the Connors' Thanksgiving had turned into a fight for survival. Jack had called the police and forest rangers an hour ago, but being miles deep in the countryside meant that help would be delayed. Until then, it was up to the family to defend themselves against the relentless creatures that had prowled outside for months. Jack, his wife, Mary, their teenage son, Ethan, and young daughter, Lucy, all knew one thing. This was their home. They wouldn't abandon it without a fight. They fortified every door and window, pushing furniture against entrances, blocking every weak point they could find. Each family member was armed. Jack and Ethan had their rifles, while Mary clutched one of the semi-automatic handguns, and even little Lucy held a pistol, her hands trembling. As daylight began to fade, an eerie silence blanketed the forest, and then the scratching started. It was soft at first, almost cautious, as though the dogmen were testing the house. But the sound grew more insistent, claws scraping along the wooden walls, paws thudding heavily on the ground just outside. From the living room, Jack peered through a crack in the curtains. He couldn't open them and let them see him. They would immediately go where he was. In the dim twilight, he saw the pack, a dozen strong, stalking around the house. their yellow eyes glowing, yes, glowing, with hunger and fury. Dad, Ethan whispered, gripping his rifle. They're everywhere. Jack nodded grimly. Stay calm, stay together, don't waste a shot unless you have to. Then a loud bang came from the back door. One of the dogmen was ramming it with his shoulder, powerful enough to shake the whole frame. Mary aimed her handgun, stands ready, her hands not trembling, waiting for any sign of the creature breaching through. Jack and Ethan took positions by the windows while Lucy crouched behind the sofa, her pistol clutched to her chest like one of her toys. The banging continued, relentless and violent. Finally, with a splintering crack, the back door burst open. A dogman shoved its way in, ducking under the frame, its massive form filling the entryway. Jack fired immediately, the gunshot roaring through the room. The bullet hit its shoulder, but the creature barely flinched, almost like it was irritated by the bullet. It snarled, saliva dripping from its fangs, and lunged forward. Mary fired immediately, and this time the bullet found its mark, right between the creature's eyes. It collapsed, twitching, then went still. But there was no time to breathe. More dogmen clawed at the windows, smashing the glass and trying to reach inside. One grabbed the window frame, shoving its head and shoulders through. Ethan, Jack shouted. Ethan fired, hitting the creature in the neck. It let out a guttural scream, wrenching its head back and pulling free from the broken window. But two more took its place, snarling and clawing their way in. The family retreated into the hallway, creating a tighter line of defense. They mentioned they thought of the movie 300. Those of you have seen it. You think about the ending, and of course, you understand what they're doing. They're funneling them in. From the front of the house came another crash as the dogman rammed the main door. The wood splintered, pieces of the frame breaking off under their brute force. The pack was in a frenzy now, each creature desperate to reach them. Jack's pulse pounded as he fired shot after shot, each one pushing the dogmen back by inches, but never stopping them. Suddenly, a window behind them shattered, and a dogman leaped through, landing in the middle of the living room. It let out an ear-piercing howl, and the others echoed in response. It caused the family, all four of them, to feel it go through them. Mary screamed, almost going down on her knees, but then she stood back up, firing again and again, emptying her magazine into the creature. It fell to the ground, thrashing wildly, but it wasn't dead. It was just enraged. Get back, Jack yelled, pulling his family into the dining room. The dog man tried to get up, dragging itself on the front claws as blood pooled around it, but even wounded, its strength was terrifying. Another one forced its way in through the broken windows, its eyes locked on Lucy. In a moment of terror and courage, Lucy raised her pistol and fired, hitting the creature square in the chest. It stumbled, but the impact only seemed to infuriate it further. Jack and Ethan turned their rifles on it, firing until it finally collapsed. Everywhere there was blood and broken glass. The dogmen showed no signs of stopping. They had made their decision that they were going to remove this family. More of them clawed at the doors and windows, undeterred by the bodies of their fallen packmates. The Connors were cornered, exhausted, their ammunition running low. But then in the distance, they heard it. A faint but unmistakable siren wail. Backup was finally on its way. They got a feeling of we might make it. The dogmen all froze, their ears twitching to their attention, momentarily diverted. For the first time, the Connors saw hesitation in the creatures. A few of them snarled, pacing by the door, but others began to back away, sensing the approach of more humans. Hold the line, Jack whispered, watching as the creatures began to retreat. One by one, the dogmen slinked back into the shadows of the forest, their eyes still burning with hatred. The last of them turned, fixing the Connors with a chilling, almost intelligent stare before melting into the darkness. We had you. You're lucky that you're going to live. Jack and Ethan started to fire again at the tree line to keep them there. But when the police and the rangers arrived, the family was bruised, bloodied, and shaken, but alive. The officers surveyed the carnage, the shattered windows, the bullet-riddled walls, and the blood-stained floors. They asked questions, but the Connors were too exhausted to answer. As dawn broke, the family stood on their battered porch, watching as the woods swallowed the police cars and rangers who had come to their rescue. The forest was silent again, as though the dogmen had never existed. Jack looked at his family, his voice hoarse but resolute. This is our home, and no one, not man or beast, is going to take it from us. When the police and the rangers were there, they asked what happened. They asked, what proof do you have of these creatures there? Because when the Connors pointed to where one of the dead ones were, they were gone, poof, like magic, or what it really was is the dogmen took their dead. Another sign of intelligence, and scary intelligence, if you ask me. The son had told them what it was, and they all looked confused, but they knew with the blood and prints on the floor and the carpet of something huge and unknown. The rangers not making any comments, keeping quiet. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard the stories of our forest rangers not giving any information about cryptids and strange happenings. Oh, no, you won't get anything from them. The Connors knew they'd survive the impossible, and though they could never, ever forget that night, they'd claim their home for good. I hope you all enjoyed that Thanksgiving nightmare special. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you have a great week. Matt Emsch, signing out.